Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. You will hear from industry leaders covering innovative, cutting-edge business, learning, and HR topics that weave current market research and technology into each episode. Our Excellence at Work podcast is hosted by Brandon Hall Group's Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Hi, and welcome to our Excellence at Work podcast at Brandon Hall Group. I'm Rachel Cook, the COO and the host of our podcast. And today with me is Alex Draper, the founder and CEO of DX Learning. Welcome, Alex. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thanks. Thanks for having me, Rachel. Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to our chat today. And before we get started here, and our topic, we're going to be talking about culture and how it impacts your organization and what we should be thinking about as far as developing the right type of culture where we can foster learning, we can foster engagement, and all of that great stuff where great companies come from. And so, but Alex, before we get started, I would love our audience to learn a little bit about your background and also your organization.
Currently live in Chicago where it's, I think it's 75 degrees Fahrenheit on a late October day, which I'll take as a positive. But going back many years, I was a trainee school teacher about 23 years ago back in the UK. And we needed to have very strict plans for our classes, to which I didn't enjoy, and I like autonomy. So that didn't work out. So I moved into adult education where there's a little bit more autonomy, and I could put my love of teaching to good use. So walked into a management consulting firm and just always wanted to come to America for a variety of reasons, especially for our industry in the education and learning. America is a fantastic place to be. So I wanted to come here and moved here, luckily, in 2005 to set up their American business. And it was very much IQ training. And I sort of got a passion for EQ training as I started to do more of this and realize there's a big gap in the marketplace about just getting people to treat each other with a more of a humane understanding. And the emotional intelligence and teaching it really started to become so much of a passion that I wanted to start my own company and started DX in 2015 with the hefty tag of wiping out bad leadership and creating organizations worth working for. And it's been an 8-year experiment ever since then. And here we are today. And
how have you wiped out bad leadership?
Well, it starts with me. It's and my own. And that's an element of truth in that, which is even with the best intentions, it's amazing how our brains get the better of us. But we've probably developed over 40,000 people now in the last 8 years, and it gets bigger and stronger every year as our brand grows. But I think the key is many bad leaders don't know that they're bad leaders, and few, there are mean people in this world, and you should run from them. But most of us have good intentions, and I think that's the problem that we've got is, I think Tasha Eurich in her book Insights said it, her empirical research was 95% of us think that we're self-aware, but actually only 10 to 15% of us are. I actually think it's lower than that. So most of us just walk around blinded by the fact that our brains are very much self-preservation machines, but effective leadership is about team preservation. So unintentionally, most of us are actually bad leaders. And that's really where our work is. It's working with people to show them their blind spots and show that their brains actually plays a counterintuitive role to being an effective leader. And the light bulbs go off, I never knew that. So we're doing good work, and there's plenty of it around.
You know, it is fascinating to kind of dive deep into the psyche of what the attributes are of a great leader. And a lot of it, as you mentioned, is around self-reflection and being able to also have that empathy and to and the dynamics of leadership is changing a lot as well as far as what is expected of a leader. And so depending on where you are in your journey, in your career, whether you're just starting out, your expectations and what you think of a leader is completely different than someone that has been in the workforce for, 3 to 4 or 2 decades. So it's a lot of mindset and change or having the ability of having a different mindset and the ability to learn and to self-actualize is so critical. And also wanted to recognize your team for winning a gold best advance in leadership development from Brandon Hall Group's HCM Excellence this year. So congratulations there. And we're looking forward to having you at our conference in February of next year and being able to share with our audience and our community all the great work that you are involved in. And so going back to culture, and can you kind of share a little bit more about culture, and what are some of the examples of how you're helping companies develop better leaders?
I think you touched it earlier there, Rachel, in the generational challenges that we have. So I'm a 45-year-old guy, grew up in England, where my mother taught me to have a stiff upper lip, never be vulnerable, and just suck it up and work. So I did, and I'm really good at doing that. Not right, not wrong. That's just many people in my generation are just do it and don't
I'm
talk about your feelings.
I'm from the same
Okay.
mindset.
There we go. Not right, not wrong. It's just that's
Right.
a cultural norm for our generation, and in certain parts of the world there are different cultural norms, and every age group, gender, and every part of the world has different cultural norms. What we're seeing now is fascinating. You've got baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, and Generation Y all in the workplace at the same time, and we're going through the technology revolution right now. Before that was the industrial, and before that was the agricultural, and we're just not ready for it. But what it's doing is for the younger generations, their view of the world is just so different to ours. Not right, not wrong. But they have technology at their disposal, and they're coming into the workforce with knowledge that I never had. I still remember using a dial phone. I had to put the pennies in and make conversations, and actually have conversations. We had dial-up, and I could barely even Google anything back when I was young. But right now they have knowledge at their fingertips. Some of it's right, some of it's wrong. Let's not go down that one. But end of the day, their view, their lens, how they see the world, and their expectations are very different to ours. And what you're seeing right now, and why culture is so important, is to get the most out of the people, because let's face it, businesses are just people. We're going to have to start working together. And if you think about culture as culture, for me, is a mirror of leadership. So culture is a living, breathing organism. It evolves. And therefore leadership evolves. We have to lead in ways, because when I join a company, really the culture is not the organization. A culture is not an organization, it's a group of people. And my first boss will really dictate the culture. It's like how they treat me and how they treat others consistently is the cultural norms of that team. And if you get a group of leaders, if not hundreds or thousands of leaders, consistently leading in a certain way, that creates the cultural norms of the organization, which is why values are so important. So if one of your values is transparency as an organization, well, you better hope that your leaders, and you sell people on that, and you're hiring people on, we're going to be transparent, and your first leader is going to be very candid and is going to tell the truth, and your first boss doesn't tell the truth and is not very transparent, we call that cultural debt and cultural conning. They're going to leave pretty quickly, and we can't afford, because we're making less babies, immigration issues, talent is a shortage, and we need to sort out our culture to hire the right people.
Alex, could you repeat what you said? What it is called for? You had went out for a second. I just want to make sure that we got that right message that you were trying to convey.
Yeah. So when we're hiring people and we're saying, hey, we have a transparent culture, for example, or we have high integrity here, but your first boss doesn't have integrity, doesn't do what they say, and or is not transparent, we call that culture conning or cultural debt. And it's when you sell someone on something, it's a psychological contract. That psychological contract gets broken, and I won't forgive you for that. I'll hold it against you. So what we're seeing right now, and why so many of the young generation are transient and are moving from company to company, it's not their fault. Don't put it on them. It's you. we're not creating the right cultures for them, and or we're mis-selling them on what our culture is. And because culture is important to them, you look at all the research out there, culture is more important to them than it was to us. What we value is not what they value, and we have to accept that. That's the whole point of evolving a culture, is you evolve to the times. If you think 50 years you've got to stay the same for 50 years, and unfortunately you're going to be left in the lurch, and it'll be over before you know it. We have to adapt, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have 4 generations in the workplace, and we have to talk about it.
Absolutely. And even if when when we were starting out, I'm just a few years older than you, but when we were starting out in our careers, and the the expectations or the cultural norms back then, we had different generations that we were also interacting with, and their experience was quite different than our experience. So, it's, I think, creating this level of being able to understand the differences, but then how do you bring them all together and create an environment that is helping them connect with each other is what we need to do, but it's also very challenging. And I want to go back to psychological safety. And you mentioned, the importance of psychological safety, but how do you create psychological safety, or what, can you offer some more context behind that?
Yeah, I always start with your organization, your culture is hollow without it. And why? Because silence kills. Silence kills culture, silence kills leadership, and silence kills relationships. Because if we can't be open and honest with each other, and the opposite of being vulnerable and being transparent is silence, then I can't help. I can't help people unless I know. I don't have as a leader, I don't have a magic wand. I can't just magically go, here's what you need and here's what you need. I can assume, but we all know what happens when you make assumptions. And we've got to rip out silence from our workplace, and especially in certain cultures like America and my home country of England, we're not very vulnerable. In fact, machoism, heroism is revered, and we tell people not to speak up. But that's a hollow culture. It's not a culture that helps human beings be their best and do their best. And for me, that's the definition of psychological safety, is where I can come to an organization, I can be my best self, I can be my true authentic self, and I can do my best work, and I can speak up about what matters to me. And in terms of creating a high-performing culture, nothing matters more. Nothing matters more. Why? Because as a leader, I don't have a magic wand or a what do you call the glass? A glass, whatever you call that glass thing that people use.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, Rachel? There we go.
Okay.
The glass globe. I don't have one. So to be a high-performing culture, it's relatively simple. I need my people to tell me what's working, so I do more of it. And I need my people to tell me what's not working, so I do less of it. And go figure, if you just do that one thing, you raise the bar every single day. But we're not very good at saying what's working. And we're terrible at saying what's not working because we don't feel safe enough. I prefer to be silent versus put myself out there for fear of retribution. So for me, it's the without it, there is no culture. There really is no. Because with the values, for example, let's go back to transparency and integrity, what we said earlier. Hey, can you be more transparent, please? If we're not talking to each other about the values and what we've stated as our cultural North Stars, then there is no culture. It just becomes a writing on the wall in some fancy spreadsheet at HQ in the ivory tower, and that's not culture. Culture is not table tennis and beer at the places. It's not unlimited PTO. Culture is a mirror of the leaders and the leaders in the business, and they need to know what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And if we've got to take out silence. That's sort of my view on how important psychological safety is, and also what it is and what it isn't.
And we've had a lot of conversations and through some of our research around psychological safety and how to create that structure. And I know that you're doing some work here too in how you're helping leaders understand or be able to have the conversations where they can ask questions and create an environment where you can exchange this dialect around, around what's working, what's not working, and also what kind of actions that you are putting to show that, well, one, if there are issues, they can be dealt with in a pragmatic way. And also, all voices are being heard, but again, it's not that simple, right? So in the larger the organization, the more global the organization is, even the more the level of complexity you have. But if you are conscious of what you are, those conversations and the actions around those conversations, even if everything is not changed, but you can see little things over time change, or my voice is being heard, but but there's a reason why maybe we can't make this change, and you're building in those types of conversations or actions. That's really important to kind of help build that culture of psychological safety.
And I think you said it, which is easier said than done. In fact, I go as far to say it's one of the hardest things to do. But we have a team of 7, and we're hybrid, and I also have a family. I've got a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old and a wife. Psychological safety needs to be in both of those units. The only difference between trust and psychological safety is trust is between 2 humans, and the opposite of trust is guarded. So if I don't trust you, we'll be guarded, and I can't really collaborate with you unless I trust you. And the opposite of trust, therefore, is I won't say what I need to say, and I'll leave things, and I won't open up as much as I should. And I always say, silence is a sickness. The more secrets that we keep, the more of a sickness it is, because I have to harbor those things, and that hurts my brain, and that's why we have so much stress. And a group of people is group trust, which is psychological safety. And that's really the difference between trust and psych safety is one's one person, one's a group of people. But they're both important. If we don't talk to each other openly and honestly in at home with my wife and my kids, then that could lead to consequences. In some cases, divorce. 56%. I think we're at 56% divorce rates at the home because we're not talking to each other. And at work, that means active disengagement and people leaving. Same result. By not talking to each other and being open with each other about what's working, what's not working, admitting to mistakes and seeing failure as an opportunity to improve, we harbor things, we hold those things, that all of a sudden it just erupts. And at home, it's something bad. And at work, it's also something bad. We've got to stop that from happening. But there are things that you can do, and that's the research that we've done. And the work that we do is what's the leading indicators? I always say psychological safety. If I have kids, so I love the movie Encanto. Don't talk about Bruno. We shouldn't be talking about psychological safety. It's too big of a word to understand. Amy Emerson, chief researcher, she got a book on it. Wonderful book, Fearless Organization. It's still a really hard concept to grasp, and we shouldn't really be talking about it. What we should be talking about is the leading indicators. Because the lagging indicators are ripping out silence, admitting mistakes. You can't measure psychological safety as a word. But you can measure the outputs, mistakes, and people speaking up and giving each other feedback. Well, what do we need to do to get there? Well, let's just talk science for a second. I don't speak up because my brain's at cognitive stress. For whatever reason, the environment that I'm in, my brain feels stressful. It sees things as a threat. And if it sees things as a threat, it will prefrontal cortex shut down, animal part of the brain goes, and we fight, flight, or freeze. So in simplistic science terms, we've got to stop that from happening. Well, how do we stop the brain going into fight, flight, or freeze? We give it the things that it needs and requires, and there's 4 of those: clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity. Every single human being in the whole wide world, no matter of gender, race, where you are, needs clarity. Why? Because in the old days, we needed to know where it was safe to eat, or where the saber-toothed tiger was, or who was on duty that night. If we didn't, it meant death. So simple. We just swapped out saber-toothed tigers for bosses. So bosses, give them clarity. Don't steal clarity. Steal clarity. That's ambiguity and fear. No one likes that. Autonomy. In the old days, we if it was cold, we'd build a fire. If there was a hurricane, we'd run into a cave. We like to be in control. So don't steal control, because you steal control, people feel like you're trying to steal their ability to survive. Don't do that. Give them some freedom. Don't steal their freedom. Relationships. We need to be part of a tribe, because if our talents and our traits and our personalities weren't treasured, it meant death. We'd be excommunicated from the tribe. So stop trying to treat people for who they are. Get to know them for the humans that they are. Treasure them so they have a sense of belonging. Don't do that. You trigger the threat circuitry. And equity. You couldn't be equal. When was equal ever fair with a bunch of humans who are all different? You can't be equal. And we couldn't just give out one loaf of bread to each human being, because some might need more than others back in the old days. We had to be equitable for the tribe to survive. No different today. Stop being equal and doing a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach. It doesn't work, never work, won't work. You've got to treat humans meet them where they are at and be equitable. And those are the 4 triggers. I mean, end of the day, it's very simple science. Every human being requires clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity at varying levels. Give them what they need. Their brain sparks up, they're at cognitive ease, and they're more likely to speak up. So those are the leading indicators. And they're all very difficult, because leaders suck at all of them. I am terrible at clarity. I'm an entrepreneur. I hate clarity. But I have to give more clarity than my team require. I don't want to give autonomy, because if I give autonomy, I'm not in control. Relationships, I don't have time for that. You're kidding me? I'm exhausted. And these are the excuses that we have, and actually 165 biases that stop us from doing it. And you wonder why there's no psychological safety out there, because we're not giving the ingredients for our people to win. And that's what we call care to win. Care for each other, clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity, and you will win through psychological safety to achieve higher performance. But oh my gosh, easier said than done.
Well, I love how you framed it up, and I loved your analogy here of how you define the triggers. So if it only could be so simple, but there are a lot of tips and tools that leaders can start to incorporate to help shape and change, the direction of where their organization is headed, or just to further, if they are a great leader, then this is just going to help them enhance what they're already doing. And again, it's not just about the one leader. You have multiple leaders, and you have subcultures within a culture, and that becomes even more complex. Your leadership team could be wonderful, but then you have something over here that's poisoning it. So you really this isn't it's a never for sure thing. It changes all the time. It's fluid. What is you mentioned playbook? What can you tell us a little bit about what your playbook is?
Yeah, the playbook goes to that notion of care to win. So the playbook, I mean, you just alluded to it too, is we need some consistency. Subcultures should be accepted, right? End of the day, the leader of the team, the culture is a mirror of leadership. So the team leader, my team look to me. What I do and the examples that I set and how I hold people accountable becomes the culture of that particular team. Now, of course, I have other leaders in my team, and they can create their own culture. But we have 5 values that I expect everyone in our company: from customer centricity, passion, pioneering, team, and smart working. So my job is to hold people accountable and not tolerate. I think you just said, always say that the culture of a company or a team is actually the worst behavior that you're willing to tolerate. And that's a problem, right? That weed in the team that you allowed to manifest itself just suddenly spread, and all of a sudden you took a high-performing team to a low-performing team because you couldn't hold that toxic employee accountable to the values of your team. I think the playbook is what we're saying is, look, can we just keep it really simple? There are 4 things that every human needs. So at the very minimum, can we just supply those? Whatever culture that you have, however you want to frame it. For us, for example, pioneering is actually autonomy. Smart working is actually clarity. Team, of course, is really geared towards relationships, and passion is around equity. So whether you call it clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity doesn't really matter. Just make sure that those 4 components and that playbook is hardwired into your culture. Because if it's not, people are not going to speak up. And then you get silence, and silence kills culture. So the playbook is, well, how do we take science and take the fact that human beings crave these 4 things, and they are the necessary ingredients. We need different varying preferences of those ingredients, but we need them. and hardwire those into the way that our leaders lead. So at the bare minimum, our leaders are just giving the team members the basic requirements for survival so that they speak up. And you don't have to call it clarity. You can call it something else. We call it smart working. Some others call it other things, like integrity. There's other things you can call it, but make sure it's in there. And that's the work that we do with our clients, is to help them to care to win. Of course, you've got to know what you're winning at, whether it's engagement or psychological safety. But really, I hope we all agree that the best way to get there is maximizing human potential through caring for each other. So just making sure that those 4 components are hardwired into every leader within your business.
Absolutely. And it is about your people, and you can have great products, but the people are the ones that built those products. And so, and in order for you to be able to sell products and to support your products or your solutions, it's really your people. So whatever it is that you're, focused on or developing, it's all about your people. And if you value your people will realize that. And in return, it's a mutual relationship. And as we wrap up here, Alex, what is your thoughts around the cultural champion?
And we're all, if you really think about it, we should all be culture champions at the end of the day, because we should all reduce our ability to want to have status and to want to be at the center of attention. I made the mistake this year of not being a culture champion for my team and worrying too much about the balance sheet and making culture a byproduct versus a primary product of and part of the process. But actually, really, we're all culture champions, whether you're an individual contributor, a CEO, or a VP of talent development. At the end of the day, we all can either set the right examples or ask for the right examples. We're all, I call it the pincer approach. We're either setting the right examples and giving and doing the right things, or we're asking for the things that we're not getting, but therefore we can all hold ourselves accountable to the North Star of our business. And it's really important that values are now front and center. So the next frontier of building a sustainable organization is culture and values, having core values that are believed in and a set of behaviors that sit underneath them that we can hold people accountable to is so important. And we all need to hold ourselves accountable to those behaviors and to call out the bad behaviors and also call out the good behaviors. But we've all got to be culture champions. We've all got to hold ourselves accountable, and we've got to hold our teams accountable to a higher standard. And that's what a culture champion, we all have that opportunity.
Well said. And thank you for joining me today and sharing your perspectives on culture. And I loved how you framed it up and how you identify the triggers and then the approaches that we should be considering to improve the culture. So again, Alex, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening in. And I look forward to seeing you next year in February at our HCM Excellence Conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.